It's time for spelling analysis. And today we have some very interesting words. First, we have a word that uses the advanced phonogram sh. Can you say this with me? Sh. Second, we have two words that are exceptions. So be listening for those. All right, our first word is ocean. The ocean was at high tide today. Go ahead and say ocean. How many syllables in ocean? Two. We will say to spell O-shan. What will we say to spell? O-shan. Let's sound it out. The first syllable is O. O. The second syllable is shan. Sh. This is our advanced phonogram. A-n. Go ahead and write O-shan, sounding it out as you write it. Excellent. And help me to write it. The first syllable is O. O. The second syllable is shan. Sh. A-n. And how will we mark it? We'll put a line over the O. Why did it say it's long sound? A, E, O, U usually say their long sounds at the end of the syllable. And we'll underline the sh. Let's read it. O-sh-a-n, ocean. Excellent. And you also hear the schwa sound in that word, don't you? Any vowel may say or I in an unstressed syllable. The next word is friend. She is my best friend. Go ahead and say friend. Let's sound it out. F-er-e. Now to spell e, you're going to use the E of field, which is very strange. It's an exception. N-d. Go ahead and write friend using the E of field to spell the S sound. And help me to write it. F-er-e-n-d. And how will we mark it? We'll underline the e. Now, this is the only word where that E of field says e. So it's an exception to the spelling rules. I sometimes like to remember when I'm spelling friend that friend ends in the word end. I don't know if that helps you, but this is an exception, so it's one you'll need to pay extra attention to. So let's read it. Friend, friend. The next word is almost. It is almost time for dinner. Almost. Go ahead and say almost. How many syllables? Two. We will say to spell all most. What will we say to spell? All most. Let's sound it out. The first syllable is all. Ah, ul. The second syllable is most. M-o-st. Go ahead and write all most, sounding it out as you write it. Excellent. Now help me write it. Sound it out loud so I can hear. The first syllable is all. Ah, ul. The second syllable is most. M-o-st. All right. How will we mark it? What sound of ah do you hear? It's the broad sound, so we'll put 2 dots over it. And what sound of u do you hear in most? You hear the long sound. Why did it say it's long sound? That's right. I and O may say I and O before 2 consonants, and there it is. Let's read it. All, o, st, almost. And here that A is saying its broad sound where? Before an L. Excellent. The next word is always. We always have pizza on Friday night. Go ahead and say always. How many syllables? 2. We will say to spell all ways. What will we say to spell? All ways. Let's sound it out. The first syllable is all. Ah, ul. Second syllable is ways. W, a, 2-letter A that you may use at the end of English words. Z. That's a z. Go ahead and write all ways, sounding it out as you write it. Excellent. And help me to write it. The first syllable is all, ah, ul, and then ways, w, a, z. And how will we mark it? Well, this is saying its broad sound before an L. And we'll underline the A. And what sound is it? The second. Let's read it. A-l-w-a-z, always. Which spelling rule do you also see in almost in always? That's right. When all is a prefix at the beginning of the word, it's spelled with one L. Notice, almost has one L, always has one L. The next word is eye. My dog has one brown eye and one blue eye. Go ahead and say eye. Now the word eye is very, very unusual. And in fact, I will just help you by showing you that it has a silent E here. And then the sound I is a y-I-E. And then a silent final E. So that's really strange. But go ahead and write the word eye. As in, my eye is how I see. And then let's write it together. So that's right. It was a silent E, then I, and then E. So first of all, what sound of I, E do you hear? You hear the long I sound. And you have a silent E here. And maybe that's because to make the word look bigger, I'm not sure. But it is very unusual, isn't it? And then this is another silent E. And so I'm not sure what the origins of this spelling are. And in fact, to me, it's one of the most unusual words in English. Sometimes I like to remember it by even thinking of a picture. And you know that I'm very much about understanding the logic of the language, not coming up with creative ways to remember it. But if you think of these as eyes, I then sometimes think of a smiley face and there's its nose. So whatever helps you to remember that there's two silent E's and I-E saying the I sound. And if you happen to know why this word is spelled that way and you find it in your research on etymology, go ahead and send that to us on the contact page of the logicofenglish.com website. We would love to learn alongside you. The next word is several. We will need several volunteers. Several. How many syllables in several? So it's actually sev-er-al. So there's 3 syllables. You might think you're only saying 2, but it's sev-er-al. So what will we say to spell? Sev-er-al. Let's sound it out. The first syllable is sev. S. Use a s. E-v. The second syllable is the of her. Al. A-ul. Go ahead and write sev-er-al, sounding it out as you write it. And help me to write it. Sev, al. Al. How do we mark it? We'll underline the Let's read it. Several. Several. Now, do you hear a schwa sound? Where is it? It's right here, several. We say because any vowel may say that unstressed vowel on an unstressed syllable. The next word is again. The train will return again at 5 o'clock. Go ahead and say again. And how many syllables in again? 2. We will say to spell again. What will we say to spell? Again. Let's sound it out. The first syllable is A. A. The second syllable is gain. G, A, 2-letter A that you may not use at the end of English words. N. Go ahead and write A, gain. And let's sound it out together. The first syllable is A. A. The second syllable is gain. G, A, N. And how will we mark it? We'll put a line over the A. Why did it say it's long sound? A, E, O, U usually say their long sounds at the end of the syllable. And we'll underline the A. Now, in American English, we usually say again, like an S sound. So this would be an exception to that spelling rules. But there are dialects where it is, I will do that again. And so it's reflecting that pronunciation. Let's read it. A-g-a-n, again. And once again, that is saying it's schwa sound. The next word is guess. Can you guess how many candies are in the jar? Guess. Go ahead and say guess. Let's sound it out. G, E, S, S. Go ahead and write it. Did you see what kind of G to use? And help me to write it. G, E, S, S. And how do we mark it? Well, underline the two-letter G. And why did we double the S? We often double FL or S after a single short vowel. Let's read it. G, E, S, S. Guess. Excellent. The next word is trouble. We had trouble with the car. Trouble. How many syllables in trouble? 2. We will say to spell trouble. What will we say to spell? Trouble. Let's sound it out. The first syllable is tra, t, Use an ow, o, u. The second syllable is bull, b-ul. Silent final E. Go ahead and write trouble, sounding it out as you write it. And help me to write it. The first syllable is tra, t, The second syllable is bull, b-ul. Silent final E. How do we mark it? We'll underline the and what sound of ow, o, u, tra? That's right, it's the fourth sound. Trouble. And why do we have a silent E in trouble? Every syllable must have a written vowel. Let's read it. Trouble. The next word is float. Do you think this ball will float on the water? Float. Go ahead and say float. Let's sound it out. F-O, two-letter O that you may not use at the end of English words. T. Go ahead and write float. Good, and help me to write it. F-O-T. And how do we mark it? We'll underline the O. Let's read it. F-O-T. Float. The next word is wild. The wild deer were out playing in the yard. Go ahead and say wild. Let's sound it out. W-I-L-D. This is an I-E-Y. Go ahead and write wild. And now help me to write it. W-I-L-D. How will we mark it? We'll put a line over the I because it's saying it's long sound. Why is it saying it's long sound? I and O may say I and O before two consonants. And there it is. It's saying it's long sound before two consonants. Let's read it. W-I-L-D, wild. The next word is wilderness. She is going on a camping trip in the wilderness. Go ahead and say wilderness. How many syllables? 3. We will say to spell wilderness. What will we say to spell? Wilderness. Let's sound it out. The first syllable is will. W-I-L. This is an I-E-Y. The second syllable is der. D-er, the er of her. Ness. N-S-S. Go ahead and write wilderness, sounding it out as you write it. Good, and help me to write it. The first syllable is will, w-I-l. Second syllable is der, d-er. Third syllable is ness, n-s-s. All right, how will we mark it? We'll underline the er. Why did we double the s? We often double FL or S after a single short vowel. Now, do you notice anything about the word wild and wilderness? Yes, they're both based on the word wild. The wilderness is out in the wild, and we added the suffixes and nest. Now notice the pronunciation changed from wild to wilder or willed. And so this is an example of how vowel sounds can change when we add suffixes or prefixes and when the stress in the word shifts. and how English spelling is balancing out meaning and sound. The next word is pounce. The cat will pounce on the toy if I throw it on the floor. Pounce. Go ahead and say pounce. Let's sound it out. P, ow. Use an ow, o, s. Use a k, s. Silent finally. Go ahead and write pounce, sounding it out as you write it. And help me to write it. P, ow, s. Silent finally. How do we mark it? Well, underline the ow. Why do we have a silent E in pounce? The C softened to S because of the E. Let's read it. Pounce, pounce. The next word is difficult. It is a difficult problem. Go ahead and say difficult. How many syllables? 3. We will say to spell cult. What will we say to spell? Cult. Let's sound it out. The first syllable is diff. D-I. This is an I-E-ya. Second syllable is fi. F-I. It's an I-E-ya. Cult. K. Use a k. S. A-ult. Go ahead and write cult. Sounding it out as you write it. Cult. Great. Help me to write it. The first syllable is di. Or diff. The first syllable is diff. F. The second syllable is fi. The third syllable is cult. K-a-ult. And how do we mark it? There's nothing to mark, but why did the I say it? I and Y may say I or I at the end of the syllable. Let's read it. Difficult. The last word is puppy. Sometimes I think I'd like to get a puppy. Go ahead and say puppy. How many syllables in puppy? 2. We will say to spell pup-pee. What will we say to spell? Pup-pee. Let's sound it out. The first syllable is pup. P-up. The second syllable is p. P-e. That is a y-i-i-e. Go ahead and write pup-pee. And help me to write it. The first syllable is pup. P-up. The second syllable is p. P-e. What sound of y-i-i-e do you hear? The fourth? And why is that? Y says its E sound at the end of a multi-syllable word in an unstressed syllable. Let's read it. P-e, puppy. You have learned some really great words, and I hope you see that as you encounter words like friend, and especially the word I, that English is actually very regular. There are a few exceptions. About 2% of English words have exceptions. However, they are very rare, and usually, like the word friend, they are one phonogram. Great work today.
Combining the science of reading with the joy of learning. Learn more at essentials.logicoфenglish.com.